What kind of emperor disguises himself as a commoner, wanders his own capital's slums, and settles a potential civil war with a cup of wine? He is Zhao Kuangyin, first emperor of the Song Dynasty, who would be known as Emperor Taizu of Song. Hey everyone, I'm Amy. Today we're going to talk about the incredible life of Zhao Kuangyin that led to his founding of a dynasty that would last over 3 centuries. He ended 50 years of civil war and built the foundation of what many historians consider one of China's great periods of cultural and economic growth. And he did it all after spending years of his youth homeless, sleeping under bridges and begging for food. Before we get started, let's take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Where Winds Meet. Where Winds Meet is a free-to-play open-world action RPG set in the early years of the Northern Song Dynasty, right after the turbulent 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. You play as a wanderer navigating a world of political intrigue, martial arts, and historical figures brought to life. The game just launched its latest patch 1.7, the Imperial Palace, which opened up the Imperial Palace of the Song Dynasty in Kaifeng as a massive new explorable area with over 1 million square meters of palace grounds and more than 3,000 NPCs going about their daily court routines. If you're interested in the history we're about to cover today, Where Winds Meet's new patch is a great way to experience it for yourself. I'll leave a link in the description below. To understand the world that Zhao Kuangyin lived in, it's actually interesting to first talk about the Chinese name for the game, Where Winds Meet, 烟云16声, and it has nothing to do with wind. Yanyun refers to the 16 prefectures of Yan and Yun, a stretch of strategic territory in northern China. And the 16声 refers to 16 sounds, a reference to the 16 musical tones as established by the later Zhou minister Wang Pu in his music treatise Lü Zhun around 959 CE. On one hand, it's a metaphor for the cultural heritage of China, and on the other hand, it symbolizes the complexity and importance of both the time period and the 16 prefectures of Yan and Yun. The 16 prefectures were 16 administrative districts around the Great Wall and the Yan Mountains. They stretched from present-day Beijing in the east to Datong in northern Shanxi in the west. But this wasn't just land. This was the natural defensive barrier, the mountain passes, the fortifications, and sections of the Great Wall itself that has separated Chinese civilization from the northern steppe for centuries. Whoever held these prefectures controlled whether cavalry could ride straight into the North China plain. Think of it as the front door to China. And in 938 CE, that front door was handed over to a foreign empire. 2 years earlier, a general of the later Tang dynasty named Shi Jingtang wanted to overthrow his own dynasty and seize the throne, but he couldn't do it alone. So he made a deal with the Liao dynasty of the Qidan people to the north. He wanted military support, and the Liao dynasty wanted the 16 prefectures. And to make sure that Shi Jingtang would remain a subordinate ally, Emperor Taizong of Liao asked Shi Jingtang to recognize him as his father. This was a humiliating moment, and Shi Jingtang would become known as the Sun Emperor. But Shi Jingtang got what he wanted, and he would end the later Tang dynasty to form the later Jing dynasty, and would later be known as Emperor Gaozu of later Jing. This was the same moment that led to the last emperor of the later Tang dynasty, Li Congke, allegedly burning the legendary heirloom seal of the realm, causing it to become lost to history, which I talked about in my other video about the seal. And the Qidan people of the Liao dynasty now controlled the 16 prefectures, the keys to China's front door. What followed was over 50 years of chaos. 5 dynasties, 14 emperors. The average reign lasted less than 4 years. Whoever had the biggest army got to sit on the throne until someone with a bigger army took it from them. This was captured by a warlord named An Chongrong, who said, "Is there a fixed bloodline for emperors? He who is strong enough in arms becomes one." The people who paid the price were always the common people. By some estimates, the population of China dropped by more than half during this period. Famines were rampant, and every change of dynasty meant a new round of looting or massacre. Kaifeng, the capital shared by many of these short-lived dynasties, repeatedly suffered from warfare, looting, and political upheaval. This was the world that Zhao Kuangyin grew up in, and he would be the one to end it. Zhao Kuangyin was born in 927 CE during the later Tang Dynasty. His father, Zhao Hongyin, was an imperial guard commander. His childhood name was Xianghai'er, which means fragrant child, supposedly because a strange fragrance filled the room the night he was born. He grew up in a military camp in Luoyang, and it was during this time that Shi Jingtang gave away the 16 prefectures of Yan and Yun and formed the later Jing Dynasty. It is said that Zhao Kuangyin preferred the training grounds to the classroom, and he was exceptional at archery and horsemanship. There is a famous story from his youth that really captures his main character energy. One day, he tried to ride a wild, untamed horse with no saddle and no bridle. The horse bolted at full speed straight toward a stone city gate, and he smashed his forehead, falling to the ground. Everyone watching was certain his skull was crushed. But he got up. Slowly, but he got up. He chased down the horse, climbed back on, and rode it until it stopped fighting him. He would spend his life doing what everyone said was impossible, and he would never stay down. At around 18 years old, Zhao Kuangyin married Lady He, the daughter of a fellow military officer. It is believed that they had a happy marriage. But in those early years, Zhao Kuangyin was still restless and poor. He spent several years wandering through the war-torn provinces of northern China, seeking his fortune and beginning some of the hardest years of his life. He slept in the wild, under bridges, in abandoned temples. He ate wild vegetables and leaves to survive. When he sought help from his father's old colleague, he was turned away. For years, he lived the life of a beggar, and these years permanently changed him. He saw firsthand how common people suffered. He felt their hunger in his own stomach, and this empathy would stay with him for the rest of his life. There is a famous legend from these wandering years that is still told today. According to this legend, the young Zhao Kuangyin fought off bandits at a Taoist temple where a young girl named Jingyang was being held captive, and rescued her. But rescuing her was only the beginning. She was hundreds of miles from home, alone and vulnerable. A young woman traveling without protection in a time of war would have been in constant danger. So Zhao Kuangyin swore an oath with her. They would become sworn brother and sister, and he would personally escort her home. For hundreds of miles, he walked beside her across mountains and rivers. When they passed through dangerous territory, he stood guard. When they needed to sleep, he slept outside her door. He treated her with nothing but respect, never once crossing the boundary of his oath. When they finally reached her village, Jingyang's father was so grateful that he offered her hand in marriage. But Zhao Kuangyin refused. He hadn't done this for reward, and he left without looking back. This story is remembered today as escorting Lady Jing for 1,000 miles, and is a remarkable story of chivalry retold in countless novels and operas. In the game Where Winds Meet, players can experience this legend through the Take Jingyang Home quest. And in the latest patch, there is a new boss encounter based on a reimagined Jingyang called the Black Clad, a fictional swordswoman who returns years later to test whether the Zhao Kuangyin who once saved her has lost himself to power. The encounter features a high-speed rooftop chase across the palace roof using cinematic lightness skills, qinggong, that we all know and love from popular wuxia fiction. Sometime after saving Jingyang, when Zhao Kuangyin was around 22 years old, he would return to his wife and family, but he still needed a way to support them. So he enlisted into the army of a general named Guo Wei, who was serving the later Han Dynasty. This wasn't because Zhao Kuangyin believed in the later Han Dynasty or anything like that. It just happened to be the most convenient way for him to feed himself and his family at the time. By the year 950, Guo Wei was the most powerful general in the later Han Dynasty, and Emperor Liu Chenyou grew deeply paranoid of Guo Wei's influence. In a desperate attempt to keep control over Guo Wei's forces, the emperor ordered the assassination of Guo Wei's entire family in the capital city of Kaifeng. Guo Wei, who was stationed at the northern frontier, was devastated and furious at the death of his family. He immediately marched his main forces, including Zhao Kuangyin, on the capital to overthrow the emperor. Guo Wei's forces were powerful and quickly captured Kaifeng and destroyed the later Han Dynasty in just a few short months. Guo Wei officially crowned himself emperor and founded the new later Zhao Dynasty. And for his extraordinary performance during the coup, Zhao Kuangyin was promoted and began to earn a reputation as a capable officer. He would eventually catch the attention of Guo Rong, the adopted son of Guo Wei, who was remembered today by his birth name, Chai Rong. Chai Rong was impressed by what he saw of Zhao Kuangyin and promoted him to be his personal chief of cavalry. It is said that Zhao Kuangyin served Chai Rong with fierce loyalty and would become one of his most trusted generals. Popular Chinese folklore and later fictional accounts would even take their relationship a step further to claim that they would become sworn brothers. In early 954, Guo Wei passed away from illness, and Chai Rong took the throne as the new emperor, and would be later known as Emperor Shizong of later Zhou. In the same year, the Battle of Gaoping became Zhao Kuangyin's defining military moment. When a right flank collapsed and over 1,000 soldiers surrendered to the enemy, the entire army was on the verge of collapse. Zhao Kuangyin rallied the line, shouting, "The emperor faces peril. We must fight to the death." He led the counterattack personally. He took an arrow to the left arm, but he kept fighting. His efforts helped to turn the battle around, and in the end, they won. Zhao Kuangyin was rewarded for his bravery and was promoted to a high commander rank of the palace guards. This promotion not only brought Zhao Kuangyin into a leadership role within the empire, but also allowed him to develop relationships with other high-ranking generals and officials. Within a few years, Zhao Kuangyin took full control of the palace guards and built his own group of followers and officials. Sadly, in 958, Zhao Kuangyin's wife, Lady He, fell ill and passed away. She was around 29 years old. Her exact cause of death is unknown, but some modern historians believe that it was related to childbirth. In her 14 years of marriage to Zhao Kuangyin, she gave birth to at least 5 children, and it is possible that this contributed to declining health, leaving her vulnerable to illness. Other historians suggest that her health may have been negatively impacted by the stress of the chaos and violence of the times. The historical records describe Zhao Kuangyin as devastated. He stayed by her side through the final illness and handled her funeral rituals with intense grief, weeping openly before returning to the battlefield. By 959, Chai Rong had stabilized the young later Zhou dynasty, and he turned his eyes to the north, to the 16 prefectures of Yin and Yun. Without the 16 prefectures, central China was completely flat. Enemy Qidan forces could gallop from the border to the capital city of Kaifeng in a matter of days with no geographical obstacles. Chai Rong knew that as long as the Liao dynasty of the Qidan people controlled the 16 prefectures, no Chinese dynasty could ever truly achieve a permanent period of peace. In the spring of 959, Chai Rong decided that the empire was ready. He personally led a massive campaign pushing north to reclaim the lost territory, and Zhao Kuangyin went with him as his leading frontline commander. The campaign was met with great early success. The Liao dynasty was caught off guard, and Chai Rong's forces quickly reclaimed several prefectures with minimal losses. The army quickly made its way towards Youzhou, which was modern-day Beijing. Youzhou sat directly at the base of the Yan Mountains and was a strategic anchor of the 16 prefectures. But just as the later Zhou forces were about to push their advantage, disaster struck. Chai Rong suddenly collapsed in his tent from a severe, mysterious illness, and the campaign had to come to an immediate halt. The later Zhou generals quickly retreated back to Kaifeng with their sick emperor. Unfortunately, Chai Rong passed away in Kaifeng just a few weeks later, around the age of 38. His grand dream of fully recovering the 16 prefectures left unfulfilled. On his deathbed, Chai Rong was worried that his military commanders would not support his young 6-year-old heir. So he granted his trusted friend Zhao Kuangyin the highest military position of the empire, naming him Grand Commander-in-Chief of the Palace Guard, in hopes that Zhao Kuangyin would be able to ensure a smooth transition. The failed campaign and Chairong's death left the entire northern border exposed, and the Liao dynasty eager for revenge. A few months later, urgent reports reached the court that the Liao dynasty and the kingdom of northern Han had teamed up for a joint invasion. Zhao Kuangyin led the main army north in order to face the enemy forces. But the army didn't go far. They halted at Chenqiao Post Station, about 20 kilometers northeast of Kaifeng. The military officers were terrified of a northern invasion without a strong leader like Chairong. They would follow Zhao Kuangyin, but they would not trust the leadership of a 6-year-old child emperor. That night, the military officers gathered in secret. At dawn, they burst into Zhao Kuangyin's quarters and draped the yellow imperial robe over his shoulders. His military officers had mutinied against him, but it wasn't to replace him. Instead, it was to name him as their new emperor, because they didn't trust anyone else to lead them through the impending crisis with the north. According to the traditional account, Zhao Kuangyin was loyal to Chairong and the later Zhou dynasty, but he was left with no choice. He knew that if he didn't step up now, not only would he probably die, the army would definitely disperse and there would be no one left to stop the attack of the Liao dynasty. Some modern historians believe that Zhao Kuangyin was not as innocent as the historical records say. Instead, they suggest that Zhao Kuangyin and his inner circle orchestrated the entire mutiny from the beginning, and that even the threat of a Liao dynasty invasion was fake. But regardless of how it happened, the mutiny did happen. And before marching back to Kaifeng, Zhao Kuangyin made his officers swear 3 oaths. Do not harm the later Zhou Empress Dowager or child emperor. Do not loot the capital, and do not harass officials or citizens. The army entered Kaifeng without a single act of looting, and this became the first peaceful transfer of power in over 50 years. But the coup was not entirely bloodless. A loyal general named Han Tong received word that Zhao Kuangyin had been proclaimed emperor at Chenqiao and was marching back to take the city. No matter the reason, Han Tong knew that this was treason. He immediately began mobilizing loyalist troops to defend the later Zhou dynasty. But the rebellious forces were well prepared. A rebel officer named Wang Yanshen had been positioned in the city specifically to watch Han Tong. And as Han Tong was still organizing his men, Wang Yanshen spotted him, drew his weapon, and chased him through the city. Han Tong fled all the way back to his home, but it was too late. Wang Yanshen burst inside and killed Han Tong and his entire family. With Han Tong dead, the last remaining obstacle to the coup vanished. The year was 960. Zhao Kuangyin was 33 years old when he became emperor, and he would be later known as Emperor Taizu of Song. He named his dynasty Song after Song Prefecture, the region where he had served as military governor, and the capital of the Song dynasty would remain in Kaifeng, which would also become known as Bianjing. But founding a dynasty was the easy part. Keeping it alive was something else entirely. Zhao Kuangyin, now emperor, posthumously honored Han Tong with a high chancellor-level title and gave him a proper burial with full honors. Some believe that this was just an act in order to project an image of a benevolent, righteous leader rather than a bloodthirsty usurper. In a game where winds meet, the aftermath of the tragic death of Han Tong is transformed into an entire storyline. In the latest patch of the game, you're introduced to a character named Han Wei, a fictional son of Han Tong, who has spent his life consumed by the desire to avenge his family. He infiltrates the Imperial Palace and puts Zhao Kuangyin on trial for 3 crimes: establishing a private treasury, murdering loyal ministers, and bringing disaster upon the people. The game takes one tragedy around the founding of the Song dynasty and asks, what does a bloodless revolution look like to the one family that bled? About a year and a half after founding the Song dynasty in 961 CE, Emperor Zhao Kuangyin invited his top generals to a lavish late-night banquet. These weren't just any generals. They were men who had bled beside him for years. They were the men who had put the yellow robe on his shoulders at Chenqiao. They had wine. Old war stories were exchanged. Laughters filled the hall. And then Once his friends were warm with drink, Zhao Kuangyin dismissed the servants. His face darkened, and he said, "I haven't slept a single night in peace since I took this throne." The generals were stunned. They asked why, and Zhao Kuangyin said, "It is not hard to understand. Who wouldn't want to sit where I'm sitting? Even if you have no such intention, what happens if the men under your command get greedy for power and money? If one day they suddenly draped a yellow robe over your body, even if you wish to refuse, would you be able to?" The generals knew what the emperor was trying to say. Zhao Kuangyin became emperor through a mutiny. What's to stop any of them from becoming emperor in the same way? They fell to their knees, begging for a way out. So Zhao Kuangyin offered them a deal. If they resigned their commands, they would receive vast estates, beautiful gardens, fine wine, and a wealth so great that their grandchildren would never need to work. And to seal the bargain, he offered to bind their families to his through marriage. They would not be enemies, they would be family. And the next morning, every single general submitted his resignation. No families were purged, no blood was spilled. He had traded power for peace, and he had done it all over a cup of wine. After securing his court, Zhao Kuangyin looked back to someone who had never lived to see his success. In 962 CE, just months after the banquet, he issued a formal imperial decree to posthumously elevate his deceased first wife, Lady He, to the rank of empress, eventually naming her Empress Xiaohui. Even though Zhao Kuangyin was the emperor now, he never stopped being the man who had to sleep under bridges and live as a beggar. Historical records and later anecdotes describe Zhao Kuangyin leaving the palace in commoner's clothing to walk Kaifeng's streets and markets. Interestingly, this is also captured in the game Where Winds Meet, where you actually first meet the disguised emperor as Big Brother Zhao, a seemingly regular guy wandering around the port districts of Kaifeng. But it wasn't just that he liked being among the people. Instead, he treated himself as a citizen of his empire, just like everyone else. When his officials told him that even the emperor had to follow a procedure that could take several days just to buy a small heated cage for warming clothes, Zhao Kuangyin complained to his chancellor, Zhao Pu, "When I was a normal civilian, I could buy an incense cage whenever I wanted. Now that I'm emperor, I can't even do that." Zhao Pu replied, "These rules were not made for you, your majesty. They were made for your descendants. If a future emperor is wasteful, these procedures will slow him down." Zhao Kuangyin laughed and agreed with the purpose. He did not lash out for not getting what he wanted. Instead, he understood that a true ruler needed to also obey the law and to follow the rules. And that same instinct, putting the people above himself, showed up in more dangerous moments too. One day, while riding through the capital, an arrow flew out of nowhere and struck the canopy of his carriage. His guards panicked, but Zhao Kuangyin stepped out, opened his robes, bared his chest, and shouted, "Shoot here next time." The assassin was too stunned to fire again. Afterward, his officials urged a citywide manhunt to track down the assassin, but Zhao Kuangyin refused. He knew that a full-scale investigation would force the assassin to involve innocent civilians, causing collateral damage. Being emperor had its own dangers and costs, and he was willing to pay it. So if you're a brand new emperor of a brand new dynasty, you need an imperial palace. And Kaifeng had one. Well, kind of. The palace in Kaifeng had originally grown out of the headquarters of a military governor and had been inherited dynasty after dynasty throughout the 5 dynasties period. Years of war, political upheaval, and hurried repairs had left it functional, but hardly magnificent. What Zhao Kuangyin inherited was an aging palace complex that reflected the instability of the age that had created it. It worked, but it was hardly the kind of palace that said that the Song Dynasty was meant to last. Between 962 and 966, Zhao Kuangyin ordered a major reconstruction and expanded the palace walls. He sent officials to sketch the Luoyang Palace of the Tang Dynasty, specifically the Purple Forbidden City of Luoyang, and rebuild accordingly. About 40 buildings were constructed within the palace walls, modeled on the Luoyang layout. And the latest Where Winds Meet patch brings us right to this new and improved Imperial Palace of the Song Dynasty. The rebuilt Imperial Palace measured approximately 1,050 meters east to west and 1,090 meters north to south. 4 main gates marked each direction: Xuande to the south, Donghua to the east, Xihua to the west, and Gongchen to the north. Let's walk through it from south to north. The main entrance was the Xuande Gate, the formal face the palace showed to the city. Some sources describe this gate as 5 panels of doors, painted red with gold studs. The walls were carved with dragons, phoenixes, and clouds. The roof was glazed tile, topped with dragon head ridge ornaments called Chiwei. Walking north through the gate, you would reach the Daqing Dian. This was the tallest and grandest building in the entire complex. This was for important ceremonies, major events, and receiving foreign envoys. Behind the Daqing Dian was the Zichen Dian. This was where the emperor held regular court sessions and received officials. But the most revealing building in the palace sat on a secondary axis to the west, the Cuigong Dian. This was where Zhao Kuangyin actually worked every day, and historical descriptions say it was deliberately plain. The steps were only a single tier high. The scale was described as small, almost like a commoner's dwelling. And deep in the rear of the complex was the Funingong, the emperor's private residence, where Zhao Kuangyin slept on the nights he actually could. But what was most unique about this imperial palace was that it was small. Sources from the period describe it as compact compared to the Grand Tang Dynasty palace in Chang'an or the later Forbidden City in Beijing. The crown prince didn't even get a separate compound. The palace walls were carved with auspicious patterns, and the pavilions and halls were arranged with care. But it was built for function, not spectacle. So, where is this palace today? The entire site now lies under meters of Yellow River silt. The Yellow River has flooded Kaifeng repeatedly over the centuries, and each time the city was rebuilt on top of the mud, burying Song Dynasty Imperial Palace layer by layer under meters of silt. In 1981, archaeologists cleaning mud from the lakes at Dragon Pavilion accidentally uncovered the foundations of the Northern Song Dynasty Palace beneath. Over the next 20 years of excavation, the outlines of the palace gradually emerged. But the original buildings are gone. Today, the Dragon Pavilion sits on top of the ruins, a Qing Dynasty reconstruction built over the Song Dynasty Palace. But in Where Winds Meet, the palace has been recreated in remarkable detail, and you can interact with it in fun ways that could have gotten you in big trouble back in the Song Dynasty. You can hide in corners and eavesdrop on officials' secrets. You can even sit on the dragon throne in certain locations. But while Zhao Kuangyin was rebuilding his palace, he was also planning something much larger. Zhao Kuangyin was not just managing the present, he was planning a future. One snowy winter night in the second year of his reign, Zhao Kuangyin showed up unannounced at the home of his chancellor Zhao Pu. This was the famous event known as the Snow Night strategy. The two men sat together, and Zhao Kuangyin told Zhao Pu that it was time to conquer the kingdom of Northern Han in order to weaken the threats from the north. But Zhao Pu disagreed. He argued that Northern Han sat on the border with the Liao dynasty, and if they took it now, the Song dynasty would have to face the Liao dynasty alone, without any buffer state. Better to leave it for last. Instead, conquer the weaker southern kingdom first, build up resources, and deal with the north when they're strong enough. This conversation became the foundation of the Song dynasty's unification strategy. First south, then north. And the biggest project of that strategy was something most people never saw. In the year 965, as the Song dynasty began absorbing the fragmented southern kingdoms, Zhao Kuangyin ordered all seized gold, silver, silk, and grain stockpiled in a single, massive sealed treasury inside the palace. It was guarded day and night under his personal control. Zhao Kuangyin's plan was simple. The later Jin gave the territories of You and Yin to the Qidan. I grieve that the people of those 8 prefectures have long suffered under foreign rule. When our savings reach 5 million strings of coins, I will send an envoy to negotiate their return. If they refuse, I will spend the treasury's wealth to recruit soldiers and take them back by force. He wanted the return of the 16 prefectures. Buy them back if possible, fight for them if not. This was an obsession that was left to him by Chai Rong, and this sealed treasury was how he was going to do it. The treasury was kept under his direct control for a reason. Zhao Kuangyin had seen how the warlords of the 5 dynasties bled their people dry, hoarding wealth in private vaults while commoners starved. This treasury was his insurance that the wealth of the empire would serve the empire. It would defend the borders, it would feed the hungry, it would, if necessary, buy peace without shedding blood. But to the outside world, his actions looked very different. People saw a brand new emperor stripping his own loyal generals of their power, dismissing heroes, and stockpiling gold in a vault he controlled personally. Without knowing the reasoning behind it, many saw him as just another selfish warlord consolidating wealth and power. And this is exactly the tension that is explored in the game Where Winds Meet. In the game, the tragic but fictional Han Wei accuses Zhao Kuangyin of hoarding the treasury for personal greed. And through this storyline, you face a new boss, the lone tyrant, who is the dark, younger version of Zhao Kuangyin, representing the violence of the past that the real Zhao Kuangyin has been trying to leave behind. Unfortunately, Zhao Kuangyin never achieved the ambition that haunted the later years of his reign. The 16 prefectures remained under Liao dynasty control until the day he died in the year 976. In fact, the Song Dynasty would never recover them. This weakened northern frontier would become one of the greatest strategic challenges of the Song Dynasty, allowing for repeated attacks from the northern invaders, and eventually opening the door to conquest by the Jin Dynasty and the Yuan Dynasty. But despite that failure, Zhao Kuangyin is considered by many to be one of China's greatest emperors. He was a military man who ended a period of chaos. He stripped his own generals of their power without a purge. He built a treasury to buy back stolen land and kept it out of his own government's hands because he didn't trust them not to waste it. The historian Sima Guang wrote that Emperor Taizu received the mandate of heaven and rose to save the world. He personally wore heavy armor, braved the biting wind and driving rain, and waged war from east to west until he had cleaned up the realm within the 4 seas. In those years, he never had the luxury of a full meal or a peaceful night's rest. Also, he could build the foundations for lasting peace for the generations to come. I think that's the most interesting thing about him. He was an emperor that knew what it meant to be hungry. He was an emperor who lived through chaos, not as someone with means, but as a beggar struggling to survive. And when he finally had power, he never forgot what it was like to have none. What do you think about the life of Zhao Kuangyin? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed today's topic, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Stay curious, stay magical.